Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 24 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and I'm going to be attempting and hopefully successfully guiding you guys throughout this live stream towards this Game Week 24 deadline, which is going to be this Tuesday. So plenty of time between now and the deadline for games to be happening, the likes of the cup games that we know about. So don't be making any of those early transfers just yet. But in this live stream, we're going to be covering all good things Game Week 24, looking at the fixtures, best players to pick out, some players you might want to look to sell going forward, because importantly, we've had double game weeks announced. So we're going to be diving into the likes of Game Week 25 and the big double Game Week 26 that I know a lot of you guys want to know a lot more about. So drop you guys in the chat. Let me know any questions you have and who is watching. Be great to see who is obviously involved. See Matty, I see Dave, hope you're doing well. And as always, guys, if you want to show your love, make sure you do like the stream and hit that subscribe button. And everything you are seeing here is coming from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So if you want to win those mini leagues or improve those overall ranks, which I know we all want to do, make sure you check out fantasyfootballfix.com, and I highly recommend checking out the premium membership available. You get access to all of the premium tools I will be showing you throughout this live stream. So, as I mentioned, guys, this is a Game Week 24 live stream, but I'm conscious that we have plenty to unpack in the coming game week. So I think it is worth noting that I'm not just going to be isolating Game Week 24 as a whole. I'm going to be looking a bit further ahead, looking at the fixtures in Game Week 25, 26 and onwards. So firstly, to kick it off, I just want to quickly show you guys, I'm going to cover this in literally 30 seconds, just some of the price changes that are potentially happening tonight. Now, I want to say, with the cup games that we have tonight, obviously Man United playing over the weekend, I really highly recommend none of you guys making early transfers ahead of Game Week 24. Anything can happen, and we have some big teams featuring in these cups. But I know some managers do like to monitor price changes, so these are them on the screen right now. We do have potentially two rising tonight, but again, this is influenced by the likes of wildcards, which obviously don't have an impact on price changes. And that's going to be Man City's Laporte and Man United's Fernandes. Fernandes, I think, probably the really appealing one right now because of that double game week 25 that we know about. But I think, guys, it's worth letting the price rise if it's going to, and give yourself a bit more time to think about your transfer strategies. And you see some of the price fallers. Livramento, we know he's back in training, but we're not sure how fit he is. And Son, a very surprising one that could potentially fall in price. He's now back in training. The fitness isn't necessarily completely clear, but he's definitely someone that's going to be on everybody's radar going into double game week 26. And other than that, guys, I don't think many people here are sat there with the likes of Norman, Jensen, MacArthur. So I'm going to skip over the rest of the price changes. I don't necessarily think there is going to be any other players here that are naturally attractive in the price change scenario. So let's go straight over, guys, to the fixture analyzer over on fantasyfootballfix.com, because this is obviously what we are looking at right now in terms of the FPL landscape. This is currently what we have to play for. Now, we know that there is so many games that need to be rearranged, dropped in here and there. And of course, we will update you guys as soon as we know that information with predictions and, of course, actual guaranteed fixtures. But this is what we have right now. Game week 24, a single game week, double game week in game week 25. And that is going to be for Man United and for Brighton. I can filter it here on the fixture analyzer, so you can see that there in the game week 25 column. Man United at home to Southampton and Brighton, two, I would say, quite favourable fixtures. And then Brighton with their double, away to Watford and away to Man United. Now, probably arguably a bit trickier fixtures, in particular the Watford one, now that the manager has been replaced. Of course, it's been 3 months of Watford. We know they rotate all the time. And now we have, obviously, a new manager at Watford in the shape of Roy Hodgson. So, could be a bit more of a tougher cookie to crack. And game week 26, we know, has been the most recent one that has been declared a double game week in 26. Again, guys, apologies if it is common knowledge to you guys, but I want to update this for those that maybe haven't known about the double game week in 26. So again, I've filtered the fixture analyzer in game week 26 column, so you can clearly see the teams that have double game weeks, and the ones that are at the top are the ones with the best fixtures. And there's no surprises. Liverpool's double at home to Norwich and Leeds is by far and beyond one of the best double game weeks I can remember in recent years. Guys, let me know in the chat, is there any sort of double game week you can remember being better than that sort of fixture for Liverpool. An amazing, amazing 2 fixtures in game week 26. Watford with their double against Villa away and Palace at home. I think that's quite a tricky one. Gerrard obviously doing an okay job at Villa, and Palace looking a much better side this season. And then Arsenal, the one that I think is probably, I would say, second best fixtures here. Obviously, our fixture analyzer is slightly favouring Watford with that game against Crystal Palace. But with Arsenal, I think in terms of a defensive perspective, and again, I have filtered this by attack difficulty, this is the one that I think could really reap rewards for those Arsenal owners. Ramsdale and Tierney in particular, I think, are really nice pickups going into game week 26, but I'll touch on those a bit more later on in the live stream. And just to quickly cover off the other doublers, we have Wolves with Leicester and Arsenal, Crystal Palace with Chelsea and Watford, Leeds with Man United and Liverpool. That is not a nice one, and I know a lot of managers right now have been going into Rafinha a bit early. Wouldn't be put off by those fixtures, but they could be a lot better for Rafinha. Burnley with their double, Brighton and Spurs, and then we have Spurs with their double away to Man City and away to Burnley. Not the best for Spurs players. And in particular, the likes of Harry Kane and Son, who I think are probably going to start emerging on people's radars now, but the double game week not looking necessarily the best time to pile in on those assets. Now, it's worth noting, along with these doubles, that naturally comes a couple of blank game weeks here and there. And it's worth me just quickly touching on those in case you come onto your team, open up on Tuesday and wonder why the hell you've got blank players. Game week 24, Brighton and Chelsea both blank. That's because Chelsea's commitment in the Super Cup. And game week 25, Chelsea and Arsenal both blank in game week 25. You can see that again, I've filtered that for you so you can see that there. Game week 26, no blank game weeks for anybody there, but game week 27, as of the time of the recording right now, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea and Leicester all have a blank game week in game week 27. So a lot of managers right now are discussing chip tactics, what sort of way to go. If you are going to be piling in on the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, probably not Chelsea because of their blank game weeks, maybe a free hit in game week 27 might be a viable option, just so that you can navigate a blank game week where you might have 5 assets that are not going to be featuring at all. So it is worth noting that going forward. So hopefully that is giving you a little bit of an outlook on what the fixture sort of settings are looking like going forward. I'm just going to put this back to the filter there so that we can have a look at the attack difficulty and the teams here for us. There we go. Man United, top of the fixture list for the next 5 game weeks. So apologies guys, just quickly rambled on the fixtures there. I'm just going to quickly see Dave saying about when is the best time to wildcard. Dave, I think the best time to wildcard is going to be completely team dependent. Apologies, I don't really necessarily think there is a right time to necessarily wildcard. I think really the best time is team dependent. I think I would ask yourself, what is your squad looking like right now? Are the game weeks coming forward that you can see beneficial towards your squad, or is your squad really not geared towards it? If you are really a mile away from it, then yes, I think a wildcard could be viable. But I would ask you, could you play for free transfers? Get yourself to a place where you're comfortable, because we have to remember the fixture landscape right now is still very unclear. There's plenty of games that could drop in and out. Don't want to be rushing into anything that could change in the coming days. Question here from Rio, which is saying, which option is the best to replace DCL? So Rio, I'm going to come into the projected points in a minute for forwards. I think that could be a good opportunity for you to maybe check that out and see who is the best player in terms of our projected points on the Fix website. Mo, hope you're doing well. Tom, casually sported a top 10k over rank. Yeah, guys, doing okay right now. I'm pretty happy, I'm pretty confident, but I've had a very good 5 game weeks where I've basically climbed about 80k. We all know that we get purple patches, and I feel like I'm in one right now, but hopefully I can hover in the top 10k and make some of this information a bit more creditable, hopefully. Farad saying, I used to be top 10k, then I took a look and arrow to the knee. Oh god, yeah, honestly. That is the big thing with overall ranks, is you can be flying so high and then you could come crash into the ground very quickly. I've had it in countless seasons. And that's the best thing about fantasy football, is you got to almost enjoy the bad game weeks and kind of enjoy how you're going to get out of that situation and back into a good place. I think that's a real big dynamic of fantasy football that I think a lot of managers neglect. I think it's a really good skill to have in the coming game weeks, in particular these blanks and doubles, because there is going to be some heartache along the way when you do miss out on naturally a player that's going to explode in a double that you didn't own just have that right mindset going into it. So, guys, obviously in the chat, let me know any questions you have about the fixtures in particular. That is obviously the landscape we have right now. We're, of course, going to update you as often as possible over on Twitter, on our YouTube channel, whenever games do drop in. But that is the landscape right now. So I think the best thing, natural progression for this, is to go into our algorithm points to see how the players are looking over the next 5 game weeks. Now, of course, over the next 5 game weeks, that is going to cover, of course, game week 24, which is obviously the priority right now for us. But then the double in game week 25, which focuses on Man United and Brighton assets. Game week 26, which is the big double. And again, I can filter each game week to specifically look at the best projected points for each game week. Game week 27 and game week 28 onwards. Because, of course, we do need to look a little further afield than just the doubles. Otherwise, if we get a bit too narrow focus, your score could be in a very, very tough place off the back of doubles. But who knows how many are going to drop in over the coming game week. So, right now, I have the projected points filtered for all players. And you can see there right now, over the next 5 game weeks, Cristiano Ronaldo, top of the tree on 37.5. Now, I probably should whisper that name quietly because I know he's in a lot of people's burn books right now off the back of his recent performances. And obviously, Fernandes going so big in contrast to Ronaldo's poor returns. So I know that this guy, his name's a little bit in the mud right now, a little bit like Voldemort and Harry Potter. We won't talk about him too much, but you can see that at 37.5 projected points, he is still the top dog to own based on underlying stats, fixture predictions. Now, we know in game week 24, they have an away fixture against Burnley, which I would argue is going to be a tricky fixture for them on the face of it. Sean Dyche isn't going to give Man United an easy run, and we know Man United haven't necessarily been in the best of form. But we know game week 25 is really where we would hope to get our rewards from if game week 4 isn't so fruitful. We know that they have their double game week, and I'm just going to bring up the fixtures again just to remind us. Southampton at home and Brighton at home for Man United. Now, of course, Brighton at home really isn't necessarily a tricky, an easy fixture for big teams. Brighton are more than capable of picking up results. We've seen that with their results against Chelsea, to name a few. I think a result against Liverpool along the way as well. So we know that Brighton have the capability to, do well against Man United. But 12.7 projected points in that game week 25, I think, shows the quality of Ronaldo going into game week 25. And in particular, that home game against Southampton, I really think that's where we could reap the rewards. It's worth noting as well, Cavani, a bit of an extended period off the back of international duty, so he isn't necessarily up and raring to go going into game week 24. So I do think that Ronaldo's minutes are more secure than maybe they were a month ago, where people were questioning about his how many minutes he was really going to get in the team. Game week 26, of course, is the double game week, one in which Man United currently have the fixtures of, let me just get them up for you guys, the single fixture away to Leeds. So the difficulty right now is with Man United assets. I think the way to go right now is, if you don't own them right now, I think probably bringing them in is a viable option for the next 2 game weeks. And then if you're bringing Fernandes, I think a placeholder for Salah for game week 26 is a very viable move that I think is almost too obvious for some managers. I think sometimes you don't need to really second guess it. With Fernandes, you can see on the list here that he's projected to score 26 points over the next 5 game weeks. But if we look in the next 2 in isolation, because with this kind of strategy, it's kind of the only kind of time period we're looking at, you can see there 4.2 projected points away to Burnley, and then 8.8 projected points in game week 25. Now, the one thing I would say about his projected points and with Fernandes is we are obviously taking information over the course of the season. And we know that the formation at Man United has shifted from that 4-2-2-2 load of rubbish. Well, I think it could work, but he hasn't done a good enough job yet of it. Into this 4-3-3 formation, which I really do think benefits Fernandes positively. So while the projected points are looking solid at 8.8, I still think there is definitely a higher ceiling for Fernandes now than maybe a month ago when we were looking at Fernandes as an option. So I really do think that if you can get Fernandes into your team for the next 2 game weeks as a placeholder for Mo Salah, when he has that amazing double game week in 26, I think that's a really viable move that I would consider. Now, you're probably wondering right now, why wouldn't you bring in Salah right now? He's one of the best players in the game. Of course, he is one of the best players in the game. So let's just quickly look at the landscape for Salah right now. Mo Salah is in the final of the AFCON, obviously Africa Cup of Nations. Going to be playing Senegal, big final. Egypt have played, I believe, 320-minute matches back-to-back. Going into this game week, obviously game week 24, the deadline is on Tuesday. They haven't even played the final yet, the African Cup of Nations. So I believe that leaves about 3 days rest for Salah and Mane going into the game against Leicester. I believe the game is not on Tuesday, it's a little bit later. So Salah's about 4 days rest. I think the big thing really with Salah is, yes, there is going to be massive FOMO within the community about not having Salah. We've seen what damage he can do. But I do believe with the double game week that Fernandes has in game week 25, I think that probably is enough of a reason to avoid Salah for the next two and use Fernandes as that placeholder. Now, let me just filter game week 25 because I'm making the assumption here that Salah won't feature massively in game week 24 due to the minutes that he has played in the Africa Cup of Nations. But if I bring up Mo Salah in game week 25 in particular, I just have to search for him in a minute. Okay, so apologies. I didn't realise that we actually haven't updated our projected points yet for Mo Salah because of his commitments in the Africa Cup of Nations. So I am going to do this one a little bit blind, but again, I do have some opinions on this. So hopefully I'm not completely reliant on the projected points, but we will get that updated for you guys closer to the deadline so I can give you a bit more of an accurate representation on Mo Salah with his projected points. Apologies for that. Obviously with the Africa Cup of Nations, we weren't sure when he was going to return, which made it very difficult to project points. But in regards to Mo Salah, I really do think that the two fixtures that he has, the Leicester fixture looks great for him. But I think game week 26 with the double is a brilliant time to bring him in. And if you can get a placeholder in Fernandes for the time being, I think that's a real valid move to make in your strategy going forward. Of course, I can't tell anybody not to bring in Mo Salah. He's one of the best assets in the game. But I think you could go a little bit against the grain for the next two and then bring in Mo Salah. Now, outside of the likes of Mo Salah, the Ronaldos, it's obvious that the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, the Jotas, the Robertsons are up and thereabouts. And it's interesting as well because over the next 5 game weeks, they do have a blank game week in 27. So this shows how kind of crucial these Liverpool assets are right now. You can see for Trent Alexander-Arnold, 5.6, 6.3, then 14.8, followed by a blank and 5.6. And you can see that with consistency of potential returns for these Liverpool assets, I think if you do own them and you come into game week 27, it really isn't a time to sell that asset. It's more of a case of basically just holding on to them because afterwards the returns are still there and the projected points continue to look great for these Liverpool assets. So the likes of Trent's, the likes of Jota's, and the one that I want to talk about quickly is Andrew Robertson. Now, somebody that really hasn't had the ownership. If I bring up his profile here, you can see that his effective ownership in live teams is only 6%. And it really hasn't been an asset that we've considered at all over the course of the season. But you can see he's slowly ticked away over the past few game weeks. A 2-pointer and a 9-pointer in 17 and 18. And then a 12 and 11-pointer over his last 2 game weeks. So slowly starting to show the form that we know he does have. Because it's been such a gulf right now in the difference between Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold in returns. That hasn't even made it a conversation about who to own. It's always been Trent Alexander-Arnold. But looking over the next 5 game weeks, I think if you're in a position right now where you're wildcarding or you're potentially looking at making a bit of a shift in structure in your team, I absolutely think Trent and Salah have to be in your team. As I mentioned, Mo Salah could wait until game week 26. But the natural sort of structure has been Jota and Salah with Trent. I really think there's a conversation right now to potentially have Salah as your sole midfielder and have the double up of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson in your defence. Now, of course, for game week 27, that will cause a few problems, but I think that is a real valid move going forward for these assets. We know their game time is going to be solid. And with the introduction to Liverpool's new signing in that front three, I do think that Diaz is going to get game time in that Liverpool side. I don't think he's somebody that's going to be sat on the back burner for the rest of the season. So that's throwing Jota's minutes a little bit more up in the air alongside Mane and Salah, of course. But I think that just makes Jota's game time a little bit more at risk as an FPL asset. And I think if there was time to go against Jota, it probably is now, and go for someone like Robertson alongside Trent and Salah in the midfield. So I'm going to leave this up, guys, the projected points, obviously, for you guys to check it out. I'm just going to quickly check out the comments, see if I haven't missed anything. Dan, hope you're doing well. in the top 10k specials. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, hopefully I can stay there, but of course it is a very tricky place to stay. So fingers crossed I can hover about in the top 10k. Liang saying triple captain in Salah in game week 26 is under consideration. We'll see. And Tom saying there's some rumours that Leicester could potentially have a triple game week later in the season. Could be an alternative triple captain. So really great points by both Liang and Tom there. I think first and foremost, if you have a triple captain available, the way I'm approaching it right now is if game week 26 doesn't look like any other use of your chip, so for example, the likes of a bench boost potentially could be an option, or maybe even a free hit, which I probably wouldn't advise necessarily. I think a triple captain on Mo Salah looks like a logical move based on those two home fixtures against Norwich and Leeds. We've seen the projected points, of course, look great for Liverpool assets, so I can only assume that they look amazing for Mo Salah. I think the big discussion right now about Mo Salah is the minutes. We're expecting him to potentially get minutes managed against Leicester in game week 24, but then we know they have a tricky run of fixtures in regards to rest time. We have to throw Inter Milan Champions League fixture in alongside the Carabao Cup final against Chelsea. So with two home fixtures against Norwich and Leeds, I would argue that if you're looking at face value, there could be a real potential of Salah getting rested in one of those two games, and in particular coming off early if they are in a comfortable position in that game. So definitely worth considering about the minutes that Salah could have in that fixture, but I still think that it is a brilliant option for Mo Salah. And the one thing I would say as well is effective ownership in the game. If a manager, of course, owns Salah, which we know is probably around 70% right now, if you captain him, it makes the effective ownership even greater. You're chucking a few triple captains in there, that is going to make him above what I predict is around 200% owned. And for those that don't know, that effectively means if you own Salah and don't captain him, then you are really in trouble if he does get returns, which seems a bit weird. Could get a 20-pointer, but because he got a 20-pointer and others are receiving 40 points of a captaincy, that is going to negatively affect your rank. So I would throw the question in, ownership is going to be massive on Mo Salah. Can you go against the grain? I think it could be a little bit risky. And the discussion about Leicester, again, a triple game week for any team is an amazing prospect, in particular Leicester with explosive assets like Vardy. I wouldn't say Ian Nacho necessarily, maybe a comfortable one on Tielemans we could do, but the big thing about it is ifs and buts, and I don't think necessarily the Leicester triple up is an absolute guarantee. So it makes you think, if it becomes a double up, would you rather go for a Salah double game week or a Leicester double game week? I would say whatever the case of the Leicester double is, I would go Salah every day of the week. So I probably want to play on what I know in front of me. And I think I'd probably advise maybe go in that direction as well, guys. But let me know in the chat what your thoughts are on that. Com say 33 or 36 could be big double game weeks, maybe perfect for a bench boost. Yeah, totally agree with Tom here. I think that the best approach when you do play your bench boost is to wildcard into a squad of 15 playing players. And I'm not a big fan of rotating goalkeepers. However, I have kind of deployed that strategy this season due to obviously all the postponements that we're seeing in Premier League games. But I do think that you have to have two playing goalkeepers if you are going to bench boost to fully maximise your potential. And obviously playing that bench boost in a double game week is just going to give you basically 30 fixtures for your players, which is going to be massive FPL ceiling. So yes, wildcard followed by a following bench boost the week after is probably one of the most viable moves you can make for your bench boost. So again, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, please do drop a like. If you want any comparisons made, please let me know in the chat. I will get them up for you and we can look at some players against one another. Of course, we can use a fixed comparison matrix, which can look up to 5 players against one another. And that's something we're going to come into now to look at players for game weeks 26 and onwards, because I think a lot of managers right now are probably got game week 26 in the back of their minds. And the problem is with game week 26 only being 3 game weeks away, you kind of have to start navigating your squad a little bit towards that direction now, rather than ignoring it completely. Because if you have no intention of playing your free hit, playing a wildcard in game week 26, before you know it, you're going to land on game week 26 deadline with very few double game weekers, and you could be in a position where you're going to have to take points hits unnecessarily to bring those players in. So what I'm going to do here is bring up the fixed comparison matrix for double game week players in game week 26 who I think are real viable options. Maybe some differentials in here which I think are worth the consideration as well. So let's bring up the first ones here. And again, this is our fixed comparison matrix on Fantasy Football Fix, one of our premium tools. Big fan of this. Something I use all the time. You can see that I have brought up 4 out of the 5 players in defenders. Let me know in the chat if there is anybody you'd want me to throw in the mix. I've got a 5th slot there ready and raring to go. That one's up to grabs, so let me know in the chat, guys. Most popular pick I will put in there for comparisons. But I've decided to put in here 4 defenders that definitely are double game week in game week 26. We know obviously the Liverpool assets have brilliant fixtures. Tierney has a really good double. I'm just going to bring it up again, guys. Apologies for jumping back and forth. At home to Brentford and Wolves. Now, we know Brentford and Wolves aren't necessarily the highest goal scorers. Score the most goals and try to get it out. So I think from a defensive perspective, Arsenal look very, very worthwhile considering. And of course, I'm going to throw Ramsdale in the mix as an option as well. But I think Tierney, a really nice option for game week 26. And Lowton as well. Now, again, I just want to quickly bring up Burnley's fixtures because I'm not necessarily a huge fan of them. But a team and a player that has a double game week always makes him an attractive prospect. And at 4.4 million, could be a nice little budget option if you are looking to shoehorn some premium players in your squad. Now, you can see there, the fixtures of Burnley, which I've just kind of got in the middle of the screen. Man United, Liverpool, double, Crystal Palace, Chelsea. They are awful fixtures for a Burnley defender. But if you're looking for a cheap option and you want to get ownership in a player that doubles in game week 26, Lowton could be the answer. But I appreciate that it's not necessarily somebody who is going to be top of the radar right now. Paulina's saying add Cucurella as an option. Okay, so I'll throw Cucurella in there for now. As an option, somebody who a lot of managers done a lot of analysis on Cucurella, and while he is not necessarily picking up clean sheets, he is a really big bonus point magnet. Somebody, I can actually filter that in as well. Now, I'm not expecting him at all to get bonus points on the same level as the Liverpool defenders, but we can look at that to see how he gets on. And just a quick reminder on Cucurella in regards to game week 26, we know that Brighton have a single fixture at home to Burnley, and obviously that's quite a nice fixture for them. Just have to remember that they have a blank game week in 24. So I wouldn't recommend bringing in a Brighton player this game week. I would look to maybe bring it in for the double game week in 25, which I think is definitely a viable option. So you can see here, obviously, with our fixed comparison matrix, below the player's name, you can see projected points over the next 5 game weeks. No surprises that Trent is leading the way on 32.3 points. Robertson on 27.4, Tierney on 18.8. And I think that's a really nice projected points for Tierney, considering that he has 2 blanks over the period. I think that's a nice projected points, mainly because of that double game week in 26. Now, when we come down to the FPL points, naturally Trent leading the way. But Robertson, worth noting, of those 92, a large majority have come over the recent period. So he is actually probably one of the most informed players right now, obviously outside of the world of Trent because he's on another planet. Goals, very few and far between these sort of assets, but Trent with 2, Robertson with 1, and even Lowton and Tierney picking up their customary 1 goal a season. FPL assists, again, the Liverpool boys are dominating, and worth noting that Robertson is starting to find his form and picking up quite a few of these of recent game weeks. Clean sheets, again, Burnley and Brighton flattering to deceive, and I appreciate that 5.1 million Cucurella is a little bit of a price to pay as a Brighton asset, in particular that they blank this game week. But I think with a double game week in 25, you can see that he's projected to score 20.6 points over the next 5 game weeks. And a large majority of those are going to be in game week 25. So while I think Cucurella isn't necessarily an option to bring in this game week, I think bringing him in the following game week for a bit more of a longer term perspective is actually a really viable option. Lamperty's somebody who is an absolute live wire, big fan of Lamperty, but with his recent injury record and the way that his minutes are getting managed, I think paying that little bit extra for Cucurella is a wise FPL move to make. I don't think you need to cut corners and go for someone like Lamperty, who could easily get dragged off around the 60-minute mark or only appear for 25 minutes. I just don't think it is worth the risk at all. And Lowton, I've mentioned, I've kind of thrown him in there. I don't really think he's necessarily a good option. I just wanted to throw him in there as a potential pick. I see we've got a couple of picks here. I'm just going to quickly throw Aït-Nouri in. I like that move as an option. We know that in regards to defensive perspectives, Wolves are, I believe, second best on the underlying stats defensively, have been brilliant options, and a lot of those have flown completely under the radar. Now, again, I apologise for quickly flicking back. Just going to bring up the Wolves fixtures. You can see they are the 4th team down here. Arsenal at home. Now, of course, Wolves against Arsenal, you would expect Arsenal to win, but with Wolves' defensive record recently, I don't think that's necessarily a terrible fixture for Wolves. Tottenham away could be a bit trickier, but then Leicester and Arsenal a double. On paper, not appealing, but I still think that with Wolves' defensive record recently, they are good for a potential clean sheet at any point. So over this coming game weeks, over the next 5, I actually think Aït-Nouri could be a really nice pickup. Yes, of course, clean sheets based on just what we're seeing in terms of the fixture list isn't necessarily the most attractive. But at 4.3 million, I would go for Aït-Nouri over Lowton. So great shout, obviously, Rio there saying about Aït-Nouri. I think he's definitely someone we can consider, and I would pick him over Lowton. The only thing I would say about the Brighton players, we know there's plenty of games to be rearranged, so you know you probably are going to be getting other games dropping in here and there throughout the course of the season, but it might be a long time you have to hold him. So this is the great part about the chat, guys. You're throwing in options and we get to make small decisions along the way. Totally agree that Aït-Nouri is a better option than Lowton. I see Dan is saying maybe a Palace defender could be an option if you don't fancy Burnley. Palace got some really nice fixtures. Yeah, Dan, totally agree. Palace and let's have a look from a defensive perspective, because this is a great thing again about our fixture analyzer is we can filter it by attack difficulty and defense difficulty. I should have probably mentioned that. So you can see that Crystal Palace leading the way from a defensive difficulty perspective. Norwich away, which I will say have looked a bit more trickier under Dean Smith since he's been in charge. So I don't think that is the same Norwich that we saw in the first half of the season. Followed by Brentford, and we know a double game week in 26, which is very attractive. Followed by Burnley and Wolves. And while Wolves is a tough game, not necessarily the biggest goal scorers in the league. So I really agree, Dan. I think Crystal Palace defenders are a real great option to go to. And what I'll do here, because I haven't got them in the fixed comparison matrix, is I will just bring up the defender section and we can have a quick look at Crystal Palace defenders over the next 5 game weeks. Now, the likes of Mitchell, I think, is a really nice option. 19.4 projected points over the next 5 game weeks. I think with Mitchell, game time's pretty secure. Attacking wise, I don't really see too much from him as an asset. You're pretty much getting just a left back that is going to be ticking along nicely, and at 4.5 million, a nice option in your team. Now, of course, we have Guy, I believe it's Guy, at 18.8, so slightly less than Mitchell and at the same price, but you probably would argue maybe a bit more attacking threat based on corners. Mitchell doesn't necessarily go forward for those. So I think Guy is a really nice pickup as well. And of course, we have the old boy Joel Ward as a potential pick, 17.6. So based on the underlying stats and our projections, I think Mitchell's a nice pickup in the Crystal Palace back line. Otherwise, the likes of Guy is a nice pick to just kind of tick over with the potential set piece attacking returns, which could obviously come along the way. It's a great shout down. I think Crystal Palace options are a really nice move as well. And when we come into the attacking department, you'll see that there's a few options available as well in terms of Crystal Palace midfielders and forwards. Now, I think we touched on quite a bit of some defenders. We're going to quickly wrap it up. Obviously, Liverpool defenders are the go-to options, and I think piling into them now is not a bad move at all. I love the double up of Trent and Robertson. I think that could really be fruitful over the coming game weeks. Tierney, I think, is a great option for game week 26. It's going to be very team dependent because you don't want to be bringing him in when they have blank game weeks and your squad can't handle it. But I think if you can negotiate your way through the fixture schedule with someone like Tierney, I think he's a really nice player to own. You can see 18.8 projected points over the next 5. I really do like that. Aït-Nouri, we're going to round it off there. I think he's a brilliant budget pick in the defence. I probably would go for Aït-Nouri, maybe over the Crystal Palace defenders as well. Competition at left back, is it there? Maybe the return of Johnny could pose some problems potentially, but I think his game time is pretty secure. Let me know in the chat, guys, if there's any worries about it. And Cucurella, do like him. Double game week 25, so you could pile him for then. But again, don't be making that move for Cucurella this game week because we know that he has a blank game week, and that is just going to absolutely ruin your FPL experience if you bring in a blank game weeker this week, and he's slightly more expensive as well. So thank you for the chat, guys. Obviously, dropping it in the chat about players. Again, I'm going to go into midfielders now, and I really would appreciate if you guys have any suggestions of midfielders you want to come into the mix. I can add them in, replace a few out. Again, I wanted to go through a few differentials, a few obvious ones in the pick. Just want to quickly check out the chat, obviously, because I always ignore it accidentally. I get caught up in my own world. I apologise. Alice was dropping in about Wolves defender, so hopefully Ain't Nori has helped you out there. Saying about Region out, I think Region out is not a bad shout. Obviously, Spurs' fixtures aren't necessarily the best right now. I really wouldn't recommend bringing in Spurs defenders. If you have Region, it's not a bad hold, but I would target probably better double defensive options in the double game weeks. Tom backed up about Ain't Nori. Fahad saying, I've got Region 2 holding for this week. Not sure after that yet. I think with the fixtures coming up for Spurs, I'm just going to bring him up just to refresh my own mind. Unfortunately, my mind is can only hold so much information, unfortunately. But Southampton, Wolves, a double of Man City and Burnley, Leeds and Everton. I'll tell you what, not the worst that I have seen from a defensive perspective. Of course, we're expecting Man City to do a job over Spurs, but I look at Wolves from an attacking perspective and don't think it's necessarily the worst fixture. And then the likes of Leeds and Everton, obviously with Leeds' injuries, Everton under a new manager could be a difficult fixture. So Region, I don't think is necessarily a desperate transfer for you. But I would say to you, is there a team maybe that you could target who has a better double game week that you could bring in for game week 26? I think, though, it's not a panic sell right now. So enough of me rambling on, guys. Let me drop in the fixed comparison matrix for midfielders. Now, again, I've left the 5th box open for you guys. I really want you guys to let me know who do you want me to include in. I know I haven't included some Crystal Palace midfielders, so maybe Olise could go in there as a potential option. But I'll just quickly cover who I've popped in here for now, just so that you guys can obviously have a bit of time to put in the chat who you want me to put in as the 5th midfielder. So Saka, as I mentioned, this whole section is basically looking at game week 26 in isolation. Now, of course, with Arsenal fixtures coming up, we know they blank in game week 25, and in game week 27. So Saka is very similar to Tierney, a game week 6 player in isolation. I really wouldn't rush him into your sides because you are going to have to negotiate blanks along the way. But I like him as a game week 26 player. Now, Son, someone that has returned to the Spurs side in training. We haven't had any confirmation necessarily where he's match fit for the Premier League, but back in training is always a great sign for him. And potentially falling in price tonight could mean you could pick him up slightly cheaper at 10.5 million, which looks like a great price for obviously a proven option in FPL. Sarr, now this guy I bet has not been spoken about much, but somebody who I am a massive fan of, and someone who I do think is going to ruffle a few feathers in that Watford front line, because I think we've been used to the front three of King, Dennis, and even Joao Pedro coming into the mix. But we are forgetting a lot of time that Sarr is by far their best player. I am going to obviously say that I'm a massive fan of Sarr, and I think he's one of the most influential players when he gets his mind in the right place. And I think obviously he is going to be somebody that is going to be a massive differential over the coming game weeks. And with Watford under a new manager, if Roy Hodgson can find the right way of him, maybe even look at him as more of a Zaha kind of player, obviously managing Zaha, could be a really good player to pick up as a differential. And Cornet, the last one. Now, it's worth noting Cornet's fitness right now is a little bit at risk going into game week 24 and onwards. But I think he is somebody that is going to be on everybody's radar because of all of the games that Burnley have that is going to be rearranged along the way. We know they obviously have a double game week in 26. So he is somebody definitely that I think we should be having on our considerations right now. Now, Obviously, Burnley picked up a new forward. We're not sure how that's going to help or hinder Cornet, but I think he's a nice move. So I'm going to quickly drop in the chat. I'm going to see who the most popular picks are in regards to the fifth midfielder. We'll get that in, and then we can have a little bit of a comparison. Tom, smashing it, mate. Great stream. How do you feel about the Man City? Oh, thank you, Tom, by the way. And obviously, guys, Tom has been getting involved in some videos recently, so keep an eye out for those in the future. A bit more of a stats deep dive, which I'm a massive fan of personally, and I know a lot of you guys are as well, so I would highly recommend checking out Tom's videos recently. That's not Tom, that's Tom Campbell in the chat. We've got two Toms in right now. Really deep diving into the stats, which obviously utilizes all our tools available. Highly recommend checking that out. I believe Tom's done 2 videos now, so definitely check out the most recent one. That's a really nice polished video. How do you feel about the Man City defensive triple up for game week 24, even with captaining Cancelo? Tell you what, I haven't even considered a triple up. A defensive triple up is quite a nice option. I'm assuming Diaz, Laporte, and Cancelo would probably be the triple up that we would be considering right now. I actually think that is not a bad move at all. The only thing about Man City is they are just kind of that bad girl that you always want but can never really get. And I feel like that's the sense with the midfielders a little bit. Like Foden's always that kind of person who I want to ignore, but I just can't. I just can't ignore him. And I think having the option to have a Man City midfielder and go for the triple up in defence might just block you for a bit of a flexibility in your structure going forward. So I like the double up, definitely. Triple up I probably wouldn't go for, but you know, Man City defensively are on another plane right now for sure. Mo saying Richarlison versus Edouard, please. Richarlison's a great shot. I will drop him in for sure. Alanga, Rafinha, Martinelli. Okay, so we got a few about Martinelli. So let's get Martinelli in a minute, because what we can do there is do Martinelli versus Saka. We can get an idea of who the best Arsenal midfielder is to own, and then I could bring out that worser Arsenal midfielder and replace it with Rafinha or an Alanga. So that's a really great recommendation in regards to Martinelli. So let's get Martinelli in right now. I think that's the right Martinelli. Hang on a second. How is that? Guys, I apologise. Here we go. Yeah, apologies. That is the right one. Okay, so as you can see there, based on projected points, Martinelli only 15.5 in comparison to Saka's 17.2. But of course, we have to know that Saka's played more minutes than Martinelli and a bit more of a consistent name on the team sheet. But Saka is slightly more expensive. Now you can see with the FPL points, 96 for Saka, 60 for Martinelli. Goals more in Saka's favour, FPL assists, shots. The one thing that is worth noting with Martinelli is there's been a bit of talk about him and the transfer business that has been made from Arsenal, and having Lacazette as basically the only recognised forward alongside Nketiah, Martinelli has potentially got the potential to be deployed as a centre forward, whereas Saka definitely won't be operating as a forward. So I think we could see a potential shift for Martinelli in some game weeks. I don't think it's enough of a hunch to go by to favour Martinelli over Saka. But I think if we do see Martinelli potentially pop up in that number 9 spot, play a little bit out of position, he could be even better of an option than what we first thought. So right now I'm going to favour Saka. I think he's worth the 1 million more over Martinelli. But if we see that shift on Martinelli, continuing to get game time, which I fully expect him to get now that Aubameyang's gone and isn't competing for that spot, I think Martinelli's a really nice shout. But I just think Saka probably just nicks it there for me. So again, got the underlying stats here for Martinelli. Hopefully that provides a little bit more insight. But I am just going to bring in Rafinha as an option because I think he falls really nicely in the price bracket of the SARs, of the Sakas as an alternative option. And it's worth noting as well, in regards to Leeds, apologies, I'm just going to bring up their fixtures a minute. They have probably got the worst double game week in 26 against Man United and Liverpool. And the fixtures either side of Leeds of this double are really not attractive either. Villa away and Everton away, obviously new managers at both this season. And then Spurs at home and Leicester away. If that double game week was attractive and they had a really nice double home, I think Rafinha would be on pretty much everybody's radar. But I personally just think with those fixtures, yes, Rafinha is a phenomenal option. I probably would look at other options and think to myself, is there more potential at the other players and teams? Now, our projected points right now is completely going against me, so I should have read that first, because 23.3 projected points over the next 5 game weeks is better than all of the players I have in comparison here, apart from Son, obviously, who's more of a premium asset. So I should probably just shut up and let the projected points talk, guys. But Rafinha, I think with the fixtures, will just make me a little bit nervous bringing him in. I think if you have him, brilliant. I would hold on to him. Definitely hold on to him. But if you are looking at bringing in a midfielder, I don't necessarily think Rafinha would be top of my list. However, I'm conscious that he is operating well on the projected points. And with the likes of Saka, I couldn't go Saka over Rafinha only because of the blank game weeks. The double looks great. But in terms of an option, I think Rafinha's nice, but he wouldn't be top of my list just because of the fixtures they have right now. Now, I think Son's worth a discussion right now before I move away from the midfielders, guys. Again, let me know any more players you want me to drop in. I'll quickly throw Elanga in last minute, but it's worth mentioning because of his limited minutes, might be tough to come to some sort of conclusion with him. And I'm always conscious with Elanga at Man United and players of that ilk, that their game time could very easily get taken away from them as quickly as it was given to them. Because we know when times get tough, Rangnick is giving game time to these younger players, but there is going to come a time where he's going to have to fall back on those big players. And I think Elanga could sit himself out from time to time. But again, that's not necessarily a guaranteed thing in the team. So with Son, I do think that he is somebody that, once he is confirmed fit, is going to be an absolutely excellent option to consider at 10.6 million. Now, a lot of managers right now will be favouring Fernandes. And I do think, obviously, Fernandes is a brilliant option in the game. He has a brilliant placeholder for somebody like Mo Salah. But I think with Son, we're getting a little bit more of a differential, a proven asset that I think you probably feel more comfortable owning than someone like Fernandes. Under someone like Conte, we know that he can really get the best out of someone like Son. And you can see with the FPL points, the goals, the assists, shots, etc., all in Son's favour and looking like a brilliant option. So, guys, I think I wouldn't necessarily pile into Son, but I really do think that he should be on someone's watch list right now. And if you're really not fancying the Man United assets, which I can totally understand, and you have a bit of cash in hand, maybe going to Son as a bit of a differential if we get confirmation that he's available could mean that he could be a nice differential to placehold Salah in game week 26. So guys, let me know in the chat, who do you want to see in the front line? I see a few people have obviously been agreeing in regards to Rafinha as an option, so I appreciate you guys dropping in there. So I'm going to bring up the forwards right now. Apologies, Elanga. Let me get him up right now. Apologies, Elanga. Okay. Again, guys, information is so small on Elanga. What I am going to say about him is it's all about the gut feel with Elanga. Stats right now, personally, isn't enough for me to make any sort of judgment on him as an FPL option. I would much rather pay the bigger bucks to go for the likes of Fernandez's, the Ronaldos of the world. However, if you are in a rank that you are hating right now, you want a bit of a punt, then I think Elanga is a nice option for your team. I just think it's a little bit too risky because I know on past experience, I wouldn't want to go for somebody like Elanga in case the inevitable in my eyes happens where he does get eventually dropped from the Man United side, and that is going to cause big problems in your team because we know that there is amazing options available with double game weeks with guaranteed game time, which we know is going to easily tick the box that Elanga isn't ticking over the longer term. Apologize, I'm just getting the fixtures up here a minute. Give me 2 seconds. Cool, just got that up. Right, forwards, guys. Let's get up the forwards as the last bit of the fixture comparison matrix. Again, all on fantasyfootballfix.com. I really recommend you guys checking it out. Now, this is a all sorts pick here, so apologies, but I'll try to filter, some picks here that I really do think are nice options for you guys. And again, I've filled all the 5 slots here right now, but please let me know in the chat who would you like me to replace in the team and bring in as a comparison for the next 5 game weeks, obviously in the projected points department and underlying stats. Lacazette, again, falls completely in the same territory as Tierney and Saka. He is going to be very dependent on your squad and how you can rotate your squad. With 2 blanks over the next 5, he is a brilliant option for game week 26. And if you can structure your team to Lacazette in a game week 26 side, I think he's a really nice pickup. Other than that, I wouldn't touch him personally. Harry Kane, we've touched on the fixtures for Spurs, and I think they're going slightly under the radar. Southampton and Wolves back-to-back, I think is a really nice 2 games. Double game week of City and Burnley, not the best on paper, but Kane, guaranteed game time over those 2 fixtures. Penalty taker, under Conte, who I just think is just going to make him a better team each month. Don't think it's the worst double game week, followed by a leaky Leeds and Everton. I think Kane is a really nice option to consider in your teams, and somebody that you could go toe-to-toe with Ronaldo. The big thing about Ronaldo, and you can see on your screens there, 37.5 projected points over the next 5 game weeks. We know they have a double game week in 25, which is really favourable. We know that already. I think his game time is going to be okay over this period as well. And with those projected points, very difficult, especially at the price ranges they are, for me to say you should go Harry Kane over Cristiano Ronaldo. I think the big thing right now with Kane and Ronaldo is, how is your team structure looking? Have you got your plan in place for Mo Salah? Because I think that's just an obvious move. And do you want to go for a structure of premium midfielder and premium forward? Or do you want to go for the structure that has been very common so far this season and remain mid-price forwards? Go for the likes of Lacazette's, the Kings, the Edwards, and give yourself maybe a Son and a Salah midfield, where you get your ownership in Spurs and in Mo Salah, of course. And then you can have a little sprinkling of Man United assets here and there. So I think that's quite an interesting debate to have, something that we're going to obviously discuss over the coming weeks in regards to a premium forward. Now, I've chucked in Josh King. Again, this guy is killing us right now in terms of FPL because he's offering so much and delivering so little. Haven't put Dennis in there because I'm conscious I'll probably get pitchforks outside my house, obviously off the back of that red card that he had. So I don't want to infuriate any managers who owned him. And Edward, last up, we know that Crystal Palace have great fixtures coming up. Double game week in 26. Edward looks like his minutes are looking pretty good right now, and his recent form has been very good. Benteke, I can't remember his name. The other forward, I'll remember it in a minute, but 2 players who could take game time away from him. But I think Edward is still the number 1 pick right now in that Crystal Palace front line. So a real nice mix here. And I want to see in the chat, guys, if anyone's been putting any other suggestions for the front line. Of course, I can mix and match them all the time. Richarlison, Mo saying, yes, I'll definitely put him in. Anthony saying, should I swap Ronaldo to Kane in week 26? With a double game week with Kane, I don't think that's a bad move at all. I would just say to you, have you got Salah in your game week 26 squad? I really do think that he should. Dan saying, as a Ronaldo owner, I hope he can score some of those 37.5 points in the 2 game weeks. Yeah, massively. I would totally agree that. I really think that the Ronaldo case is a perfect example of what happens to FPL managers. Ronaldo has burnt a lot of you guys right now. Obviously, in the double game week, Fernandes went off. He went absolutely off. It couldn't have been worse for Ronaldo owners. Ronaldo, on the other hand, absolutely spluttered like an old bloody Ford Fiesta. Apologies if you own a Ford Fiesta. But I think really with Ronaldo, we know that there is a great player there. We know the underlying stats are still good. The projected points are still good. It's very difficult to tell you guys not to consider past performance, because past performance doesn't necessarily predict future performances. And I really do think that Ronaldo is still a brilliant option. I appreciate that you guys are probably a little bit burnt from him and you don't want to go that way again. But I really do urge you guys still to consider Ronaldo as an option over that double game week, because I still think he's a brilliant pick. So I think, Dan saying it meant the next 2 game weeks. Yeah, I still think he's a great option. Honestly, Dan, I think he's a brilliant option. So guys, I know you've been burnt by Ronaldo, but I really still think he's a brilliant pick. I know you've been burnt, but he can still do very well this double game week. So would you do Ronaldo to Kane with a -4 in week 26? I wouldn't necessarily make a move for a -4. Yes, Kane's got a double game week, but I think Ronaldo could still do well in a single game week. A lot of people saying about putting Broha in, Edward. Okay, so, and Richarlison. Mo, because you have asked so nicely, I am going to put Richarlison in the conversation, and I'm going to get rid of Lacazette. Now, the only reason I'm getting rid of Lacazette is because, as I mentioned, he is a brilliant game week 26 option. I wouldn't consider him as a 5 game week option. Just to put it in perspective, Lacazette for game week 26 in isolation for forwards is projected to score 9.7 points, which is better than any forward in the game. So if you are looking for a forward for game week 26 in isolation, I think that he's a really nice pickup. Not a 5 game week player though. So mentioned about Richarlison. Sorry, let me get my other filter up. Let me put Richarlison in the mix here. Okay, so Richarlison there, 17.1 projected points, 7.4 million, so pricier than King and Edouard, but under a new manager at Lampard, so it could be a very different story over the coming game weeks for Richarlison. Now let's just quickly refresh our memory for Everton fixtures coming up, because I think it's worth noting that. Newcastle away, Leeds at home, Southampton away, Man City at home, Spurs away. No double game weeks in this period. Tricky games against the likes of Man City and Tottenham, but nice games against Newcastle, Leeds and Southampton. Would I consider Richarlison as an option? No. Yes, there is definitely potential for him to get returns over that period. I'm absolutely not denying it. But at the price point that he is right now at 7.4 million, with the likes of Edouard and King, 1 to 2 million cheaper, and with double game weeks, I just think we can't put Richarlison in the conversation right now. I think it would be a real punt, and I'm not going to put you off it because obviously that is part and parcel of the game. It's a great fun aspect of the game. I just think with double game weeks being dropped here and there, I think you can just reap your rewards and cover your bases a bit more along the way rather than going for an Everton asset like Richarlison. And my personal opinion is when a new manager comes in, we need to know what structure they're playing. Is Richarlison going to be a focal point in that team? Is he going to be considered? We just don't know what formation he's playing, how he's operating the Brazilian. So I think monitoring Lampard's Everton over the coming game weeks is probably the best move to make. Then we can look at Richarlison as a potential option in your FPL team. So I apologise for bursting your bubble there. Hopefully I haven't offended your opinion, but I think he's probably a wait and see right now. And again, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, please do drop a like. It is always appreciated, of course. So guys, as I mentioned, the fixtures, the forwards that I have in front of you right now are very much looking at game week 26 in isolation. But I think there is a real debate about how to operate your forwards going into the coming game weeks. I think Salah in the midfield is a priority in your teams. Having a forward in the premium department of Kane and Ronaldo is going to be the real tipping point in fantasy, I believe. I think there's going to be a big shift of some managers going for the Kane or Ronaldo route alongside Salah, and there's going to be others that are going to maintain the Watkins, Antonio, Calvert-Lewin front three, to name a few, and have the Son and Salah midfield. So let me know in the chat what direction you're going in. Can't tell you what direction I'm going in right now because I have no clue. But I think it's going to be a really, really interesting time for fantasy coming up in regards to the structure of teams and how people operate in their transfer decision making. So it's going to be a really interesting time. So guys, I have covered all of the hot topics that I wanted to cover. So what I'm going to do now, I've been rambling on for coming up an hour. And I know you guys have Friday nights. You probably want to go party, have a good time, etc., etc. What I'm going to do is open the floor. I want to open the floor to you guys for a Q&A session. It's going to be an opportunity for me to give my opinion on some questions. But more importantly, if you want me to delve into some of the premium tools, I can use those to support my argument for your questions. So if you haven't already, you're sat there, you want to ask a question, drop it in the chat. Don't be scared. No question is a dumb question. I will answer all the questions along the way. We'll get through the questions, and then depending on how it goes, we might end it there for the live stream. And we're going to be having a deadline stream on Tuesday at 5:30. So we're going to have a 45-minute live stream. So if you have any late-minute questions then, I can answer those as well. But let's get through some of the questions. Let me know in the chat, guys, what you want answers. So Victor is saying, thinking of free hitting in 26, wildcarding in 28, free hitting in 30, bench boost and triple captain for the double game week of 33 or 36. Of course, captain is Salah for game week 26. Is that good planning? Well, Victor, first and foremost, love the plan, the structure. I think we're in a period right now where uncertainty is still a thing in FPL, but I think we can start to have some sort of plan in place going forward. It's worth noting, we have about 15 game weeks left, and a lot of managers right now have 6 chips available. So, we have to really consider when we're going to be utilising our chips now, because before you know it, you're going to blink and miss out plenty of game weeks and still have all these chips that you kind of just sat with. So I really like the free hit in 26. I do like because you get to bring in plenty of players who are double game week in, and you can really attack that game week. Now, just to remind ourselves of the game week 26 games that you definitely will be looking at. Liverpool, yes, I think is a obvious move, but I would say to you, if you're free hitting, you're probably bringing in players that everybody else already owns. Salah, Trent, and then you could go a little bit against the grain with Robertson. So that's probably your real tipping point. Arsenal, I think, is probably where you're going to get your biggest value from if you free hit. The people will have Ramsdale, I'm certain of it, but the likes of Tierney, the Sakas, the Lacazette, I don't think many managers are necessarily going to own just because of the blank before and after. I think some managers will pile in and then come straight back off, but I think some managers will see the blank afterwards and ignore them attacking assets. So I think that's really where your big selling point is going to come, and where your big kind of, I can't think of what it's called, but your big kind of USP is coming from. Now, Burnley, I don't really see huge attraction. Watford, we know that everybody has a King or a Dennis, and I wouldn't necessarily say to you to go with a defensive option. And with Palace, I don't necessarily see huge returns for their assets. So I think free hitting in Game Week 26 is a viable option, but I still prefer the triple captain on Mo Salah in Game Week 26. Now, the reason I think I would hold my first free hit is because of, first and foremost, the blank Game Week in 27. A lot of managers will be sitting there with 3 Liverpool, a couple of Arsenal, and we don't know what else is going to happen in the future game weeks. And with some fixtures coming up, like Everton assets against Man City, who are tricky, I think maybe free hitting in a blank could optimise the trip more than game week 26. So that's my personal opinion on the 26-27 sort of debate. And in regards to bench boost, I think bench boost is definitely utilised the most when you wildcard the week or two before, because you get to build a squad of 15 players and effectively get 30 fixtures. So if you're on a bench boost, I really highly recommend you using it after your wildcard, directly after. I hope that helps, Victor. But again, it is all team dependent. I probably need to see your team in a bit more detail to give you a bit more of a valid opinion. Aiken saying, I still have Salah in my squad. Will you sell him now for KDB for a 2-week punt or hold? Well, that is very good going. You holding on to him. That is more patience than I definitely would have. But I absolutely understand why you went for that move. Okay, so you can see on the top of your screens there, Liverpool's upcoming fixtures. Now, I think you'll be holding Mo Salah for game week 24 in the hope that he plays. But I think we probably have to look at it realistically. Klopp is a maniac. He plays his big players in Champions League, dead rubbers. He does whatever he wants. But Mo Salah has played 320-minute games. He has a cup final to play. Very limited game time rest. I would argue that even if he does play, how match fit is he going to be? I think that's probably the big thing for me is, although Salah might appear on the starting 11, that guy could be absolutely roasted. So after that, Burnley away. So if he doesn't play against Leicester, he's definitely playing against Burnley. And then a double game week in 26, which looks absolutely delightful. So I think the big thing really is, would I sell him right now? No. I think if you've held him this long, I think you probably just hold on to him, because if he doesn't play against Leicester, he's going to play against Burnley. And I think that's a great fixture for Mo Salah. Burnley are not the sort of tight defensive unit that they were of seasons gone by. And then the amazing double in 26. So yes, Kevin De Bruyne is looking really appealing with Brentford and Norwich. But I just think if you had Salah this long, I think you're just kind of burning a free transfers and then go back to another. So I think if you've held this long, of course I think De Bruyne is a better option over the next two, but I just don't think it's worth your free transfers to go back and forth, personally. Anthony say, thinking of bringing in Man United defender for double game week 25, who do you suggest? Well, I think David De Gea, apologies if you mean defensive or defender, is the best defensive FPL asset. Outside of that, Dalot is a very tricky one. I'm an owner right now, and I can tell you I hate owning him. He's done me very well in game week 23, but it feels like he's anytime he could get benched with Wan-Bissaka. I think he could easily get rotated in that double. So I think Dalot, the likes of Luke Shaw, are just such tricky picks to own. If you want to go safe, and I can't even tell you Maguire because his minutes have been managed, it would be someone like Varane. But again, that is just not a good use of your money. So I would probably say avoid Man United defenders, unfortunately. I think David De Gea is the only defensive FPL asset I would consider in your team. I just can't tell you to bring in a Man United defender because right now it is just so uncertain where to go in that team. Okay, we got a few more questions here. Rio saying free hit in game week 30. Yes, game week 30 I think is a viable move. I don't know what our fixture analyzer is looking for game week 30. Apologies, let me just get it up. Game week 30. Okay, so game week 30 I think right now is, and apologies guys, let me know in the chat. My mind's completely scrambled. Is that the potential blank or double? Let me know. But there's definitely a theory behind playing it in game week 30. But right now at the time of recording, they are all fixtures that are happening. And it doesn't necessarily look like the best time to free hit, but I know that it is a game that a lot of people are considering right now. And again, something that's going to be happening a bit later on down the line when we got more information. We can really craft together a chip strategy, of course, in these live streams, which are going to be hopefully valuable for you guys. But I think game week 30 is a very popular one. Shep is saying, how do I get Salah and Son in my team with Tielemans, Martinez, Smith Rowe, Gallagher, and Gray? Okay, so again, I don't really know your forward and defenders to see where the cash cow is kind of coming in your team, because what you have there is, and Martinez, I'm not sure, is that Martinelli? Maybe Martinelli. Smith Rowe, first and foremost, would probably be my priority to sell in that team, just because of his minutes being really, really difficult to predict in your team. And you need to really give yourself some... Oh, Akers confirmed there's a potential big blank in game week 30. So yes, I think the free hit's a great time around then. You need to find a cash cow in your team. I would probably think you have got a load of premium forwards or defenders, but I think Smith Rowe is the easy one to make way in your team. But you really should have some big cash in the bank. So Smith Rowe up to Son, I think is a real valid move. And then I probably would look at getting rid of Martinelli, probably, just because of the blanks that you have coming up. Otherwise, you hold to game week 26 and then look to sell afterwards after the blank. But again, I don't have your squad to really give you a valid opinion there. I apologise. Anthony said to be worried about Salah rested for Norwich. Totally agree. Definitely a potential for him to get rested in that double game week. For me, it just seems like such a great opportunity. I kind of accept it. And the big thing about Mo Salah in game week 26, if you triple captain him, is you know everybody is going to be captaining him, which basically means that you are avoiding yourself getting a huge ownership hit, which I know it's a really boring way to play fantasy, but sometimes it is just worth doing it. Dan, thank you for tuning in, buddy. Hope you're well and hope the family's all good. Thank you for tuning in, buddy. So I'm saying, great show, Nacho. Thank you, mate. I've still got Salah, Trent, and Jota. Also, 2 Arsenal dudes. You feel I should keep them all for the double game week and blast both Arsenal guys, or maybe a free hit. So you've still got Salah, Trent, and Jota. So that's looking solid right now. Obviously, you're getting the benefit of the fixtures coming up and the amazing double game week in 26. That's great. You have the 2 Arsenal guys. So for this game week in particular, it's looking really solid for you. Then in game week 25, of course, you have the blank game week for Arsenal, which is going to be a tricky one to negotiate unless a game gets dropped in there. But then obviously the double game week in 26 looks great. I'll question what the rest of your squad looks like. I think if you can hold on the Arsenal assets until game week 26, I think that's a real kind of strong place to be. Don't think you need to free hit then and use your team in game week 26. And then you can look to move away from your Arsenal assets after game week 26. So maybe a little bit of pain in game week 25, but potential big rewards in game week 26. So that's the way I would probably look at it. And I think you're in a good place with that if you can negotiate game week 25 well. Victor saying it's a blank. Okay, thank you, Victor and Aiken, for confirming that. Brian, will I be punished if I go without Ronaldo and Fernandes? Got De Bruyne and Foden already. Don't want to sell them. I really can't tell you to sell Man City assets. With Brentford and Norwich back-to-back, if anything, you have to hold those Man City assets. It's an amazing opportunity for those midfielders to go big in those games. Yes, of course, you could get punished by Ronaldo and Fernandes, but you could also get punished by Mo Salah coming back from the African Cup of Nations and scoring a hat-trick in the last 20 minutes against Leicester. Unfortunately, you can't own them all. I think if you have De Bruyne and Foden, I would hold. I would hold both of those. I think that brilliant differentials and amazing fixtures. Right, guys, I do apologise, but I am going to have to end the stream now. I've been rambling on for about an hour 10. thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, please do give the stream a like and hit that notification bell and subscribe button. And I really do recommend, if you guys have enjoyed the site, checking out fantasyfootballfix.com. All the information is in the bio below. Amazing tools available, and you can just upload your squad for free. Get access to some of the free tools, which I really recommend checking out. It's just a really nice sort of string to have in your bow in this back end of the season, as other tools available. So I really recommend that, guys. We're going to be having another live stream on Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. UK time. This is going to be carnage. Could be a massive Q&A. You guys can ask as many questions you want. I'm going to be flying through them. So if you're on a live stream and you're not getting answered, come to this live stream and I'll be certain to answer any questions you have. So thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. UK time. Take care. Have a great weekend. Thanks again. See you later. Cheers.